You are listening to Practical and Woo by Mindset and Manifest. My name is Eden, and I invite you to embark on a journey with me to explore the practical and spiritual edges of the unknown for the purpose of allowing you to embody and empower yourself uniquely as you are and to intentionally create and live a life of freedom and fulfillment. Each week, I am going to discuss topics such as energetics, reality creation, manifestation, astrology, tarot, and more to help empower you to live beyond perceived limitations and to practically design your life so it feels like absolute magic every step of the way. Let's dive in. Well, hello, brilliant soul. There's something remarkably easy about having a critical eye. And I would even venture as far as to say that criticism is one of the most accessible human talents that we have. It's also a talent that requires very little risk, very little vulnerability, and very little personal investment. We can stand comfortably at a distance from someone else's creation, business, dream, and immediately identify what we believe is missing, flawed, ineffective, misguided, or incomplete. We can spot the typo, identify the marketing mistake, and explain how we would have done it differently. And because criticism often disguises itself as intelligence, discernment, expertise, or sophistication, we rarely question its authority. But I've been thinking a lot about this lately, and it's leading me to a question that I've wanted to bring here to you. What if having a critical eye is not actually that impressive? What if the far more rare skill is having a creative one? Because there's a profound difference between noticing what's wrong and being willing to be the one who can build what's right. There's a profound difference between evaluating someone else's path and having the courage to walk it yourself. I think many of us underestimate how much distance and variance exists between these experiences. And I notice that our culture is often one that rewards commentary over creation, which only emphasizes the issue. It's as if in this world of ours, everyone's an expert on everyone else's journey. But how can we tell an entrepreneur how to run a business we've never built? Or tell an author how to write a book we've never even sat down to write? How can we instruct other people to heal wounds that we've never personally confronted? But our culture does this readily and often with conviction and false certainty. We must come to know and learn that every visible decision has an invisible context, and every action has a history that's attached to it. There are costs to creation that are often buried beneath the surface and are hidden from our view. The navigation of the growing edges, the fear, the self doubt, the financial allocation or lack thereof. There are hurdles to overcome that instead of celebrating, we criticize, thereby serving to squash the seedling that erupted through the soil. But hopefully not. Hopefully, the criticism only strengthens the resolve of the person who broke through with their creativity. And hopefully, we can find in ourselves to celebrate instead of to criticize those who are daring to try in the first place. I believe we must start asking ourselves whether or not we've earned the right to criticize the thing that we're being faced with. Because criticism without experience creates a mere illusion of understanding. It's the difference between looking at a map and actually hiking the mountain. Have you ever pictured something in your mind and told yourself it would be easy, doable, simple, only to be met with the unexpected challenges of that experience? I know I have, and I imagine you have too. When we fantasize, we tend to romanticize the outcome, but we don't account for the impact of the breakthrough. And we also don't account for who we were trying to be in order to arrive at that outcome. There are always unexpected twists and turns. And if you approach them with conviction and understanding that you are capable, because you are, then those twists and turns become the colorful part of the journey that allows you to beam at your growth in the process. but it can feel so tempting to lean towards criticizing because this habit is offering a veil of protection in some way. Criticizing is something we can do to remain observers of a situation and also keep ourselves separate. By criticizing, we're ensuring that we remain untouched by the consequence and also unassociated with the person whom the consequence touched. It wasn't us who was rejected, fell on their face, or made a mistake. We're instead joining the collective of the pitchfork wielding patrons and exclaiming that we're separate from them and that they should have known or done better. The critic remains safe because they never have to discover whether or not their ideas work. The critic never has to confront the experiential part of their reality. Thus, they can save face from the risk of embarrassment or cringe. But criticism is also the place where imagination hides from execution. It's also the place where people become experts without ever becoming practitioners of reality. In this conversation, I'm suddenly reminded of a blacksmith, where a piece of metal is not strengthened through the observation of the blacksmith, but forged in fire, pressure, heat, and repeated contact with the forces that shape it. We're remarkably similar to this process of metal making. There are life lessons that cannot be borrowed or inherited. Instead, they're lived through the participation with life itself. This is why people who have actually built put the pedal to the metal in the process of building or even overcoming something often develop compassion. Because these are the very same people who understand the cost of creation, which allows them to have an understanding of where there could have been mistakes and allows them to see the bravery where there perhaps was once imperfection. When you actually commit to your journey wholly, you begin recognizing that every person attempting something meaningful is wrestling with invisible dragons, just like you. I think this perspective becomes especially important in an age where we consume so much of other people's work. We must remember that we rarely see the thousands of moments that preceded that which has been offered for public consumption. The failed drafts, the abandoned ideas, the financial risks, the sleepless nights, the self-doubt, the learning curves, the tears, the pivots, the courage that was required to continue. Instead, we encounter that which has been made visible without considering the origin story. Oh, look, that business failed, you might say. But do you know the personal growth journey that the person stewarding that business was grappling with? Do you know the layers they shed or the wisdom they've gained? The answer is likely no. And if I'm being honest, hopefully no. Because if you're aware of someone's struggle, why would you ever desire to be critical of it? My only guess is because it somehow masks things you're nervous others might judge of you, so you cast judgment instead. In my opinion, it becomes more valuable to cultivate your creative eye rather than your critical one. Instead of asking, "What's wrong with this?" you might wonder, "What courage is required here?" Or instead of asking, "Who does this person think they are?" we might invite ourselves to ask ourselves, what would happen if I gave permission to become who I am? The creative eye is interested in the potential. It has this uncanny ability to look at unfinished things and see becoming. There comes a point where the energy we spend evaluating other people's lives could become fuel for building our own. And when we do, we ourselves become someone who demonstrates the courage that it takes to keep moving forward on our dreams. We become someone who acts as the reminder that action is possible. We become able to celebrate movement wherever we may see it because we understand the tenacity that it required. We allow ourselves to understand the emotional labor of becoming and the friction of growth. And since we can understand such things within ourselves, we can also see it in others. This is one of the many paradoxes of personal growth, namely, the more deeply we engage our own creative fire, the less interested we become in extinguishing someone else's. Life stops looking like a spectator sport when we give ourselves the full and complete permission to enter the game. And from within the game, criticism loses its intoxicating power while creation becomes infinitely more rewarding. I want to invite you to consider where your attention is currently invested. Are you evaluating or creating? Are you commenting or participating? Remember that your life will always grow in the direction of your attention. And if your attention is primarily focused on what everyone else is doing, building, creating, risking, attempting, or getting wrong, then your own creative fire may slowly begin to dim. So let's reignite your soul fire by becoming someone who is willing to create, willing to build, risk, and become. Allow yourself to discover what only experience can teach. And if it feels hard or even impossible at times, allow yourself to remember that every person brave enough to bring something into the world is carrying a weight invisible to everyone else. And every act of creation, no matter how imperfect, contains a quiet act of courage. The creative eye is what fosters the ability to see and honor all of that. So allow yourself to step into the limelight of your own creative eye and discover who you then become. Until next time.